Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming along. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes for people to join us, and then we'll be starting at 5 minutes past. We are expecting a couple of other people, so I'll give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll make a start. And just to double check, everyone can see the slides okay. Perfect. Thumbs up. Good. Okay, I'll give it one more minute, and then we will kick off. And just to say that we will be recording the presentation section of the event today, and then we'll go into a Q&A that won't be recorded afterwards, so we can have a discussion between ourselves. But yeah, the presentation section will be recorded. Okay, I'm going to make a start, so I will start the recording now. I think that has started. Yeah, recording started at the beginning. Perfect. Great. Okay, so let's start. So welcome everyone to this event that is taking place to mark QIA plus Pride Month and also Carers Week. So we have both events taking place and crossing over this week. And this talk today, this event is called Putting LGBTQIA plus Carers on the Map. So just very briefly to go through the running order for today. So we'll introduce each of ourselves, each of the guest speakers that have joined us today. We'll then briefly speak on Pride Month and Carers Week. We'll then have a section where we will pass over to Esther, who will speak about sharing experiences. And then we'll talk about what perhaps good practice looks like what some barriers and issues can be that people with an intersecting experience of being LGBTQIA plus and also a carer can look like, based on a document from Carers UK, before talking about inclusive policies at Queen Mary, and then having a discussion afterwards. So I will introduce myself first, and then I'll go across the line of presenters that I have on my screen. So my name is Darren Hunwicks. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm an Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Queen Mary. I work on the dual portfolio of LGBTQIA plus inclusion and disability inclusion, and I also support the Faculty of Science and Engineering. Liz, you're next on my screen if you want to go next.
Thanks, Darren. Hi, everyone. My name's Liz Grand. I also work within the EDI team. I'm one of the EDI managers, and I look after the gender equality portfolio within the team. My pronouns are she and her.
Thank you, Liz. Esther, you're next on my lineup.
Alrighty. Hi, everyone. My name's Esther. I'm a reader in health psychology and I work in the medical school. So I'm part of the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry. I'm here as a queer carer of a child with disabilities and co-parent. So I'm not a part of a co-parent. My child is someone who doesn't live in my house. So lots of intersecting identities there, which I hope we can have a chance to talk about.
Esther and Carol.
Hi, my name is Carol Malcolm. I too work within the EDI team, supporting Liz with the gender portfolio, which includes Athena Swan, some of the policy changes that you may have come across related to gender and Athena Swan, as well as working on projects around race and mentoring and so forth.
Thank you, Carol. So that's all of us here today. So moving on, just very briefly, just to touch on Pride Month and Carers Week. Pride Month dates back to the Stonewall riots in New York City in June 1969. Pride Month is about the LGBTQIA communities and overall community coming together in a celebration and solidarity, and often it's marked by parades and protest marches, readings, public speaking, education and awareness raising events such as this one, and many others. And as well as celebrating Pride Month is also a time for the LGBTQIA plus community and allies to continue to raise awareness of the inequalities and discrimination faced by LGBTQIA plus people around the world, and to campaign for equal rights and freedoms for all. Thinking about our presentation today, celebrating Pride Month in an intersectional way is really vital, as it recognises that overlapping identities impact the experiences and lives of LGBTQIA plus people throughout history and today. And Carol, do you want to speak briefly to Carers Week as well?
Sure. Carers Week is an annual campaign to raise awareness of caring. It highlights the challenges unpaid carers face and recognises the contributions they make to families and communities throughout the UK. It also helps people who don't think of themselves as having caring responsibilities to identify as carers and access the much needed support. Carers Week is led by Carers UK alongside a number of other charities. This year, the theme is putting carers on the map, highlighting the invaluable contributions of carers across the UK and ensuring their voices are heard loud and clear.
Thanks, Carol. So that's just a bit of an overview of the two awareness and inclusion events that we're marking as part of our event today. And now I'm really pleased to be passing over to Esther, who will share some experiences. Esther, I will stop sharing my screen so that people can see you, if that's okay, rather than looking at the slide. Is that okay?
It's a lot of me, but yeah, go on.
Might be a bit more engaging than just looking at the slide whilst you're speaking, and then I can reshare afterwards.
Okay. So I think I think we were hoping as well that some other people might want to share. So like you can chip in at this point if you want to talk about your experiences or ask for help or advice or to link up with other people. Like you're so welcome. It's not just me spouting off. So probably my experience is a bit different. I don't know, because I only came out 5 years ago and left my weird, apparently straight life, being a bit of a Stepford wife, and started to live a more authentic life, and hooray for that. But it has meant that my journey has possibly been a little bit different. We were talking in the group about how you live, where you live really affects your experience, because I live in a particular London borough that just seems to be very kind of straight and a bit Stepford wife, if I'm honest. So my experiences as a queer person, you know, sort of by stealth and then out are a bit odd. Like I don't, at home, I kind of don't identify, like I can't see myself reflected in the other parents at my son's school or in the people I bump into in the supermarket or anything like that. It's really odd. Whereas at work, I feel a lot more comfortable, so much more at home, especially with not just staff, but the student body as well. It's a much kind of safer place for me to be, if you like. So I'm also parent to a teenager who has autism and ADHD and some other bits and bobs of challenges that have made school attendance impossible some of the time. He's an excellent human and the great joy of my existence, but his situation, it's not just his needs, is it? It's the way his needs match up with what school can offer, has meant that he can only attend on a part-time timetable, and that we're changing schools now, so we have to apply for lots of different kinds of schools. We have to apply for funding, we have to apply for transport. It's a job on top of the job, and it can be a bit of a lonely business if you're not partnered. And I don't have community where I live in the way that I would need community. I don't have my queer community around me, but I do have my carer community with lots of parents, mums mostly, whose children aren't able to go to school. So it's a funny sort of intersection. I hope that other people listening to this have had the good experiences that I have had at QM, and don't often say wondrous things about work institutions, but actually I've had an enormous amount of support here. And I think one of the most important things to remember in Carers Week is, like, we may not always identify as carers. We do what we do for love, fundamentally. That's why we're doing it. Like my mum had encephalitis, so now actually my brother is caring for her, really. We do it for love, and it is a huge source of joy. And growth, you know, and strength, and you do things you never thought you'd be ever able to do, ever. But we all need our community and our people and our team, and I think I was thinking about how much I love my caseworker who keeps me sane and is my person to be able to bounce things off. And there shouldn't be, I think, when we live in a bit of an individualistic society, sometimes we think we shouldn't need the level of support that we do need, but we absolutely do, because effectively, if you're both a parent, a carer, maybe you've got a full-time job, blah, blah, you're managing the aspects of your queerness that might make life a bit difficult. Why shouldn't you have a team to look after you? Why don't you deserve that? You absolutely deserve that. So maybe if I wanted to say one thing, it would be like, get your team. We've got a full-on mum support group thing. And as I say, I've got a brilliant caseworker. And I think also for carers, we struggle to put ourselves first, because the to-do list is just 3, 4, 5 times longer than other people's to-do lists. So we need to be the first to do, you know, to take care of ourselves, not just to be better carers. Right, so it's like you don't rest just to work, you know, but to have a life. This is our life, and there's a lot of joy we can take from caring, but it's hard, and it's bitter sometimes, and it's sore and sad. And if I have to fill in one more form about my kids' challenges, I just don't know what I'm going to do. So I think that's all I really wanted to share. I always want to try and Darren, Carol and Liz know I always want to offer advice and try and be peppy about things. So my advice is find your people, find your community. They might be in places you don't expect, and trust people like caseworkers and experts. They are experts. They do want to help. Trust them. Just don't have to do it all on your own, because you can't really, and you shouldn't need to.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing your advice. I'm sure that will be well received, and it's certainly good advice. So we'll move back to the kind of presentation side of things briefly, and then we will come back to have some more chat afterwards. So let me just reshare my screen. So if we move along the slide deck, because that moved to the correct slide, perfect. So just for some sort of context around what some of the research has found and what Carers UK have found, that the organisation that Carol mentioned, who actually in part run Carers Week or promote Carers Week as an activity and an inclusion and awareness date. So in 2023, Carers UK, who are the main membership charity in the UK for carers, they published a document titled Supporting LGBTQ+ Carers, a Good Practice Briefing. And this document considers some of the challenges and barriers carers with this intersecting identity face, and it also highlights some good practice across the UK in supporting LGBTQ+ unpaid carers. So just to speak through the items on the slide here. So when comparing the experiences of lesbian, gay and bisexual carers to heterosexual carers, research conducted by Carers UK found that lesbian, gay and bisexual carers were more anxious about their current financial situation, were more likely to say that they were struggling financially, more likely to feel lonely or isolated, and more likely to have poor mental health. So 7 in 10, or 70% of lesbian, gay and bisexual carers reported a long-term health condition or disability, compared to 60% of their heterosexual carers as well. So that was another difference that was found. Issues and barriers identified included caring for someone who may not be aware of their LGBTQ+ identity, or caring for someone who has rejected the carer themselves because of their LGBTQ+ identity, losing aspects of their LGBTQ+ identity as a result of the demands of their caring role. And for young LGBTQ+ carers especially, there may be fewer opportunities for them to actually explore their own identity and their own place within the LGBTQ+ community. Also, there are issues around experiencing mental health and loneliness, prejudice, discrimination or harassment when accessing services, and feeling distrustful as a result. So actually the organisations that people are approaching to support them, they're feeling perhaps that's not a place for them, or they don't feel seen or represented by those organisations, or that they're a safe space that they can share in. And also feeling like they should be the one to care for a family member, perhaps if they themselves are unmarried or they don't have children, if their personal family unit doesn't look like kind of 2.4 children, and they feel that they have that additional responsibility, but because they don't have those other responsibilities in other aspects of their lives. Also, there is an issue of having to continually come out to services. So this is something that I would say the majority of LGBTQIA plus people can identify with. And you continually have to come out probably every day, even if you're not really realizing it in one way or another. That absolutely applies also when accessing care services, not feeling comfortable about sharing their sexual orientation or their gender identity. Perhaps not being recognised as a carer because people are expecting to see a wife or a husband, and perhaps they may make assumptions about the relationship between the carer and the person being cared for. Feeling like the person they care for has gone back in the closet. So again, that could be due to some of the issues that we've covered in these points here. And also experiencing physical health issues as a result of medical gender transitioning for people whose gender is part of their identity, which for some trans carers may affect their ability to carry out their caring role. So those are some of the barriers and challenges and issues that may face LGBTQIA+ carers. It's just important just to reflect that not all of these will impact everybody. This is not an exhaustive list. People will have very individual experiences, but these are some of the commonalities that were drawn out in the document that Carers UK put together. And I'll pass over now to Carol, who will talk about some of the good practice recommendations and the things that can be put into place or considered to address some of these.
Thanks, Darren. In terms of good practice, Carers UK recommend the following: understanding different terminology, using diverse language and imagery in any sort of publications or event flyers, signalling that services are for LGBTQ+ inclusive, not making assumptions about someone's identity, sexuality or relationship status, asking about people's pronouns, using gender neutral language, ensuring that LGBTQ+ carers have a safe space to talk about their concerns, holding information and advice sessions, peer support groups or other events for carers in trusted local spaces such as LGBTQ+ centres, considering how information can be communicated to carers who may not be in contact with services. Other recommendations involving LGBTQ+ carers in policy and practice include inviting LGBTQ+ carers to be part of a strategic steering group or advisory group. When conducting research with LGBTQ+ carers, if sample sizes are small, try to avoid making generalizations. Co-designing projects or services, sharing any learnings on development and inclusive practice. Over to you, Darren.
You're on mute, Darren, just to let you know.
Thank you, Liz. So I was just saying there's some really good recommendations there. And I think some of them, or many of them, we can certainly draw a direct link to some of the barriers and challenges that I was mentioning in some of the previous slides. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, but it is a good place to start. And it is based upon some of the research that was conducted by Carers UK, so we just have an evidence base, and we'll be sharing links to that document so that you can have a read through it in more detail if you would like to. So what I will do now is I will pass across to Liz, who will speak about our Queen Mary approach to inclusiveness. Liz, if you want to take over.
Thank you, Darren. Yes, so I'm going to just say a little bit about policy at Queen Mary and that interlink between caring and LGBTQIA+ identity. And kind of before I jump in, just to talk about sort of the background behind this and the legal obligation that Queen Mary has under the Equality Act 2010 to ensure that all of our policies don't unlawfully discriminate against LGBTQIA+ people, and that is directly or indirectly as well. So that is the legal basis that we work from, but we very much, in line with our strategy to be the most inclusive university of our kind, we very much see that as the baseline, and we want to go far beyond that, not only to protect against discrimination, but actually to make sure that we're creating an environment in which LGBTQIA+ people feel safe, feel supported by strong and inclusive policy. And so with that in mind, we are working towards ensuring that all our policies, if they are not already, are explicitly LGBTQIA plus inclusive. And I will talk here about kind of HR/EDI policies specifically. And these policies are reviewed periodically with that inclusivity being one of the key considerations there. Something that I wanted to sort of mention from the outset is a new piece of work this academic year around how we actually define carer and how carer is defined at the institution of Queen Mary. And earlier this academic year, our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Steering Group reviewed a proposed definition of carer that we would use as an institution. And this definition builds upon the NHS definition, but is very I've forgotten the word, but it intends very intentively, aims to be broader than the NHS definition and really explicitly recognise the diversity of family structures and the range of relationships in which caring might be taking place. So this is not always, as Darren was saying, you know, that heterosexual 2 parents, 2 children structure. There are many, many ways in which people are caring. It may not always be for family members or for spouses. So it's really important, in line with, you know, our aims to be the most inclusive and what I've just been saying before, that actually how we define a carer really aligns with that. So just to tell you the definition that the EDI steering group agreed and are moving forward to implementing is: a carer is anyone, including children or adults, who provide unpaid help and support to another person who could not manage without their help because of their illness, frailty, disability, a mental health problem or an addiction, and cannot cope without their support. The care they give is unpaid. Care may be provided on a daily basis or may fluctuate depending on the person's condition and the circumstances. So that really looks to be as broad as it can be and recognise those differences there. Linked to this, the university has a trans inclusion statement of commitment, which lays out the university's approach and position with regard to trans inclusion. And it synthesises the various legal duties that we're obliged to take alongside our values and our strategic ambition to be most inclusive. And why that's kind of important in this context is that really underpins how we engage with policy and how we approach policy development, but also the language that we use within our policy to make sure that we do take that approach that supports the inclusion of trans people at the organisation as well. And building on that more generally, inclusive language is really an essential aspect of policy in this context. So throughout our policies, we seek to ensure that the language is inclusive, and that specifically in this context is thinking about gender neutral language. So we take an additive approach to language. So for example, our menopause policy statement states women and people who have a menstrual cycle, or women and people who menstruate, to have that inclusion built in there really explicitly. And our policies may also be all-encompassing. And by that, I mean they use terms such as the employee or all staff, so that we don't need to kind of go beyond that. This applies to all staff regardless. Those things may sound really small, but as we know, language is really, really important and really essential in terms of ensuring that people know what they're entitled to, they feel seen, they feel heard, and they are supported. Linked to that as well, we do make sure that our policies are also explicit where they can be. So, and I will talk a little bit more about our parental leave policies in a moment, but our code of practice for parental leave explicitly states that these policies all apply equally to staff in same-sex relationships, for example. Again, that might sound like something really small, but it's really, really essential in this context. So just to give you kind of some examples, what does this look like in practice? I've drawn out a few areas just to mention, the first being around parental leave policies. And as I've mentioned, there is a legal obligation, obviously, that we ensure that these policies don't unlawfully discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender reassignment. But our policies go beyond statutory requirements. And I've mentioned before that we're very explicit in language in that policy, but also we're very clear of the equitable provision that individuals have under that policy. So, for example, our maternity leave and our primary carer adoption leave is exactly the same. So whether somebody is the primary carer under adoption or is taking maternity leave, the pay and the length of leave is completely the same. And that is also the case for a partner of those people. So whether that be secondary carer adoption leave or paternity partners leave, again, it is exactly the same provision. And that's really important. But what we also do is make sure that there is explicit difference outlined where there needs to be. So an example of that would be actually the length of notice that the university requires you to give under that policy to then receive that leave and pay is going to be different whether you yourself are pregnant and having a child or whether you are adopting a child. And so the length of time that you have to give notice for adoption, for example, is actually by the end of the week in which the adoption agency notifies you that you have been newly matched with a child. And that is very different to the 15 weeks of notice that you need to give before the expected week of childbirth under maternity. So that gets into quite a lot of the detail, but I'm hoping that gives an example of how these things are considered and made sure that they are explicitly outlined in policy and recognised. We have a special leave policy, which looks to provide additional support to employees at times where they may need to take leave for their own welfare or for the welfare and well-being of others that they care for. And this policy provides a definition around dependent that is broad and a bit like what I was saying in terms of the definition of carer, gives examples that go beyond immediate family members, partner, spouse, child, for example. And as example, it talks about close friends that people may be caring for as well. I've talked a little bit about our menopause statement already, but that takes an inclusive approach in language. But also beyond that, it also signposts to specific support for menopause for those who are LGBTQIA+. And that again is really important. Our staff and manager training that we deliver around menopause also explicitly discusses the intersection between sexual orientation, gender identity and menopause, and some considerations to be aware of there. And kind of last 2 points, many people I know are not aware that Queen Mary has a fertility guidance provision, and it's a really fantastic provision that the university has, recognising that actually it is really common for individuals to be going through fertility treatment, whatever that kind of specific treatment might be, and actually recognises that there can be a real significant emotional and physical challenge there that individuals may need support at work through doing that, and that might be through time away, and that's important, recognising that the way in which people may have a family can look very, very different, and the journey to getting there can look very different. And obviously that's really important in the context of the intersection that we're talking about today. And that policy also really importantly outlines the legal context in particular relation to IVF treatment, and the protection that individuals have once a fertilised egg has been implanted. They are deemed to be legally pregnant, and all the protections that they then have under that policy. And it's really important that that is explicitly outlined for people to know their rights and to know what they're eligible for, as well as outlining the leave that people can have for that specific treatment. And very last thing I'll mention is a kind of broader policy, but I think it's a useful time always to signpost our flexible working policy and mention that all employees from the day one of employment have the opportunity to request a change to their working arrangements and request flexible working. They can do that from the first day of employment now. And there have been some recent changes around that, which actually allow people to make up to 2 requests in 1 year and no longer have to put forward a business case as to why. And those are really, really important differences in the policy. And the time period in which the employer has to respond to a request and consider an appeal as well has shortened as well, recognising that it's really important that people have their requests heard, have that explored and an outcome quickly. And I think it's also helpful to mention that people can request a permanent change to their working arrangement or a temporary change. And that, in the context of caring, I think is a really, really important difference in option as well. I know I've said a lot there. We have some links at the end of the slides, which will be circulated as well. So you can have a look at any of those things that might be of interest in your own time. And also we'll have options for questions as well. But hopefully that gives you a sense of, what Queen Mary is doing and continues to do to think about these intersections and the inclusivity in relation to policy.
Thanks so much, Liz. So that brings us to the end of our sort of more formal section, if you like. We do have some time for questions and answers, and as Liz mentioned, there is a list of resources and links, both internal and external to Queen Mary, that we've posted into the chat as well. So do take a look at those. I'll stop sharing my screen now. And I've also noticed that I don't appear to have the option to stop recording. I think it's embedded into the webinar, unless you turn it off before you start it. So it might be a bit too late now to stop the recording. So just bearing that in mind, if anyone would like to post any comments into the chat or questions, I'm happy to sort of field them, and we can have a chat through them. But thank you very much to Liz, to Carol, and especially to Esther as well for sharing your own personal experience. Yeah, absolutely. We'll come to you, Esther, and yeah, please share anything additional you'd like to.
I think I've got a question. I don't know if this is relevant to anybody else who's listening, but so it's lovely to have all the policies, isn't it? But it's still up to the employee to be able to have a conversation with their line manager. And I wondered if there's any availability of maybe mentors or advice or something about how to have great conversations about the things that we need, because sometimes it can be really, really hard to ask for what we need. Well, I find it can be.
I'm happy to answer that if I think it's a really good question, Esther, and also on the other kind of link to that is how it's received by the line manager and guidance maybe for line managers as well on receiving and dealing with requests. There's a kind of a range of things available, but also I think that we can and will be building on. The first being an example around the menopause stuff that we have been doing actually includes some guides for having a conversation about menopause. That's both for the individual but also for managers on how to either raise the topic yourself or with somebody else and discuss what adjustments might be helpful, and then also what those adjustments actually can be and what policy that relates to. And I think that's kind of a good practice in terms of providing people kind of with tools. Sometimes people feel more empowered if they've kind of got something they can hold and refer to and that guides them a little bit. But I also think that it's often really helpful to have a space to have an informal chat or a sense check with somebody before you then maybe want to raise something with a line manager. And that's where I think our staff networks are really, really important, really valuable. But also, and I appreciate people don't always want to go to HR, but there is always the option to speak to someone in HR on a purely confidential basis that isn't a request, isn't anything formal, isn't going anywhere, but just I just want to know what's available for me. This is my situation. What options do I have? And that is always available as well. And I think sometimes going to HR feels formal, but it doesn't have to be, and it doesn't need to be necessarily. So, and signposting, case studies of what other people do is also really powerful as well. So that's something to do more of, I think. I also had a question I wondered if I could ask to Esther.
Please.
I just wondered, you talked about Queen Mary being a really positive place for you, and I wondered about kind of what one thing or few things have kind of made the biggest difference for you that you think.
A couple of things. So lots of gay staff. There's just loads of queer staff, LGBTQIA plus staff. So that's been really nice. I've never ever had to worry about that amongst staff. Just everyone's been great and lovely and just sort of, I want to say normal. Do you know what I mean? It's just normal, and people don't make assumptions actually. And the other thing is because my son's autistic, has ADHD, and lots and lots of my colleagues have kids who are autistic and have ADHD, and we all joke about like we should all us grown-ups go and get assessed, see if we can get a like group discount or something. We're quite irreverent about it because we see our struggles reflected in our children, and that's been lovely. And I love to have a bit of humour and lightness because it's all a bit difficult otherwise. And I think it's really nice to be able to be understood like without really too much explanation, and also it means that we check in on each other, which I so appreciate. So and also have been able to work really flexibly. Like this part-time school thing is a massive challenge, but no one's ever given me the side eye or been unkind about it. It's just what it is. So I so appreciate it. So yeah.
Thanks, Esther. Also, I know I had noticed your lovely rainbow NHS badge as well, and I do think that I love all of the badges. Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Esther. If you're explaining what that one is.
Sorry, I'm muted. It's my little trans Care Bear there. That is who's my little trans pride Care Bear. Yeah, and I have my NHS rainbow badge.
Yeah,
and I've got one for emergency medicine. Okay.
But these visual signifiers and the kind of reminder that people are aware of some of these issues, or they're open to finding out more about them, that there is someone you can go to, that you feel safe to speak to tell about your individual situation. If the language is inclusive, if the imagery in some of the documents is inclusive, if people are visually signifying, I think all of these things add up and make people feel more comfortable.
And for carers as well, like I didn't really, sorry, I'm just totally hijacking it now, but so it helps students to see me and know me and for me to be out and stuff, but also from a caring point of view. So medical students go through a particular like allocation process for when they're going to do F1, they get sent anywhere in the country for a job. But if you're part of your family's caring system, it's kind of devastating. So I've been able to advocate for students in that regard as well, which has been a beautiful thing, because I don't know if they realise that they're supporting me as much as I'm supporting them, because that's, you know what I'm saying, like being a carer can be a joy. That's a lovely thing for me to be able to do, to use my crumbly old age and my privilege to stand up for someone else. That's beautiful. So, I don't know, it's just nice. I'm glad that's happened. So don't underestimate people on the call. Don't underestimate the importance of your life experiences in enabling you to support other people, and for that to bring you, nice things as well as bringing them nice things.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Esther. I'm looking at the chat. I can't see any other questions. So I'll give one extra couple of minutes. Carol, you've popped your hand up. Yeah, if anyone else wants to add anything, please do.
I'm on mute. I was just wondering, Esther, with all, what's going on in your life, in the work sphere, and your son and all the rest of it, how do you take care of you? Because that's one of the things that
Do you know I do wellbeing stuff all morning, all the time, Carol? I was at the hospital this morning with the operating theatre staff, and that was the question to everybody. So how do I take care of me? Anyone?
Because this is something that I struggle with myself, basically.
Well, I don't know about your situation, but my son has called me out on it over and over again. And he has even recommended that I watch a particular animated TV show where this woman's learning to be more herself. And he said, I think you need that, Mum, because you don't accept help from other people and you always pretend that you're all right. So, I am trying really hard. I'm practicing. I have to practice because I'm a bit, I don't know about you, but I'm a bit one of those fierce independent people. Yeah, it's not a good habit, turns out.
No, I know.
What are you doing, Carol, to look after yourself?
Well, I'm part of a sandwich middle. That's what I am.
Yes,
so I have caring responsibilities, mother at one end and a 10-year-old at the other end. So it's sort of like two opposing factions, really, different needs and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So that's why I work part-time. So it just makes life a lot easier. But it's very hard really to carve out time within the time that I do have to look after myself, really. So this is something that I've shared with the team, and every Tuesday morning when I'm not at work, I take myself off and I do something for myself. So I might end up in a museum, in a gallery, or just having breakfast in the Greasy Spoon, or connecting with a friend who may not be working, just for coffee. But, things like that to make it feel as though I've done something for myself in all of the madness. But yeah, that's the only way. Or when I'm down the supermarket, I might allow myself to wander down an aisle or something. Yes, exactly.
My friend messaged me once in that exact situation where I was like, I can't go back. And he said, it's fine, you just send a text and say there are really long queues and then go and sit in Costa.
I know that one very well. So it was just interesting to hear, the kinds of things that you do, and it's made me realise that I'm not the only one that does that.
It's hard. We're not also, I think, I don't know what it's like for other people on the call, but we're not brought up to centre ourselves, because that's, we were taught that was selfish growing up. And also we shouldn't have to look after ourselves so that we can be better carers or better parents or better, we should just be able to be a person. But I think there's a bit of like reclaiming of that space needs to be done. It's not easy. Good question though.
Thanks, Esther.
Thank you both. Yeah, some good tips there, I think. And it's absolutely important to look after yourself, just to look after yourself, as you say, Esther, as well as the other benefits it will undoubtedly bring to other people. But you deserve that care as much as the other people you are caring for as well. Okay, I think we're approaching the end of our time, and talking about caring for ourselves, perhaps we can finish with enough time to have a stretch and a cup of tea before meetings will start on the hour, if people have them. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming along. Again, a massive thank you to Liz and Carol and Esther for speaking today, sharing so openly and warmly. The links are in the chat. And I will post the recording as well, and let you know when it's available if you do want to share it on with colleagues. But thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the day, everybody. Take good care.
Thank you, Darren. Thanks for organising. Take care, everyone. Look after yourself. Do something for yourself quick, because Carol's going to come and check.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.